Hi everyone, I hope you're able to watch the overall steps of MAST and to watch steps 1 and step 2 in detail. This is step 3 in drafting. This is called chunking. Chunking is not a term that I made up. It is a brain science term that is basically talking about groups, how to group things together so that we may use them in a way that makes things memorable. Okay, and so that's what chunking does. I use an example of a phone number. How do we group our phone numbers? There's a lot of things we do that too. Okay, but what about in paragraphs of information? That's a little different. Well, if you think about it, a paragraph itself is a chunk. The reason we have a paragraph indentation is to say, there's a chunk. Verse markers is a chunk. Okay, but we're calling for a little bit different. We're calling for something a little bit higher than that. We think about what we're doing. Okay, where do mistakes happen in translation? Mistakes happen like this. If I'm going to translate something for somebody who's next to me and they're sharing something, my biggest mistake is going to need to be what's called rewinds. I need to rewind because they said something, I interpreted it, and I thought they meant certain things. Then as they went on in their story, I realized, whoops, I said the wrong thing because they transitioned it in a different way than I anticipated. Okay, chunking, the wider the chunk, the more we can take in to translate, the less mistakes we have. And so we're calling for contextual chunking, to be very specific. Verse chunking is thought chunking. It's a little bit better than sentences. It's a lot better than fragments, okay? But it's much better to have several verses together. And when you do several verses together, what you're doing is you're grabbing that meaning and you're holding on to it and saying, this is a good solid piece of meaning. And if I make a dividing line here, then I'm gonna grab the best meaning. And I know that those transitions are going to be in place in the right way, in the language that I'm translating to. Okay, so you're trying to get a wider chunk. What is the biggest possible chunk that you can take in as an individual without forgetting too many details? I know this is different when we approach different passages. Psalms is different than a gospel. Proverbs is different sometimes in the gospel depending on the language transfer. Genealogy is very tedious and very different. Chunks become very tedious, small. Paul in the epistles is very dense in its meaning, so chunks become a little bit smaller sometimes. But the biggest chunk you can take in as a person and say, I can remember this and I can blind draft it, is what you want to do. Some other neat things happen in chunking. If you really think about it, in consume, you didn't get every detail. In verbalizing, you didn't express every detail. In chunking, what you're doing is you're actually reviewing that chapter till you draw those lines of where you're going to divide up that chapter. That is a highly intelligent step. It means that you're overviewing this very quickly and you're saying, this is where the meaning lies, I can divide it right here. You're speed reading. You're actually going through and reading that entire chapter quickly and saying, here's one piece of meaning, here's another piece of meaning, here's another piece of meaning. You're reinforcing the first two steps and you're going on and saying, I can take this in a smaller context, but still big enough to do that blind draft with good meaning structure. Okay, and so a lot of people say naturalness is something we really want to capture. That's a foundation to good translation. This helps it. This helps it by saying, here's where meaning lies, and I can remember it. If you get those two things down, you've mastered this really good for naturalness. And so that's what chunking is supposed to do. It's more than just a simple breakdown of things to make it easy for somebody to remember. There's a lot more going on, and I hope you can see that from this short video. Please watch the other two videos for the first two steps of drafting. Watch this next one with chunking. With the blind draft, because these two go together very well. And that will complete the full picture of drafting. You're on step 3 now. Please go to step 4 when you can. Thank you very much.